like to welcome you back to our podcast. We are studying through the book of 2 Corinthians, and today we're in 2 Corinthians, the 8th chapter, verse number 10. The whole 8th chapter of 2 Corinthians the Apostle Paul is talking about something that's essential, and that is the taking of an offering. This is what he says now in verse number 10. I give my opinion on this matter. What's Paul saying? This is what I think. This is my opinion on this matter, his opinion on the taking of an offering. And it says this, for this is to your advantage. The Apostle Paul had this understanding that if he could get the Corinthians to give, it would be to their advantage. It would be something that they needed to do to help themselves. You see, taking and giving of an offering and giving in the right way, and again, under the grace of God, because of an earnestness in our hearts, giving that offering will actually be to your advantage. And then the Apostle Paul goes on and he says, who were the first to begin a year ago, not only to do this, but also to desire to do it. Now, what did he say? He said, you began this a year ago. Now, going over to 1 Corinthians 16, verses 2 through 4. On the first day of every week, each one of you should put aside and save, as he may prosper, so that no collection be made when I come. When I arrive, whomever you have may approve, I will send them with letters to carry your gifts to Jerusalem. And if it is fitting for me to go also, they will go with me. What's Paul saying? Paul is saying, a year ago, I told you, I gave you this instruction to take an offering. Now, that came at the very end of his letter of 1 Corinthians. And he said, this is the system. This is what I want you to do. Can you imagine the amount of money that they took up in a year's time? That on the first day of every week for a year, 52 days, you would take and you would put aside and save your offering. Can you imagine how much money that and just out of the Corinthians, also the Macedonians took part in this offering also. Can you imagine the amount of money? Now, let me just say this, and of course I'm being a bit facetious. They didn't have Venmo then. What did they have? They had silver and they had gold coins. They didn't even have paper money. Can you imagine just the weight of this offering? And I just need to leave that because we're going to pick up that later on. But notice what he says. Going back to verse number 10. And he says, but also to desire to do it. We understand that the Corinthians had this desire to take an offering for the people in Jerusalem. They had a desire. And again, I said one of the key words is earnest. Earnest and desire is basically the same root word. That it talks about a desire down on the inside of you to give. Let me just say this, and I said this before. If you don't have a desire to give, if you're just pinching pennies, then first of all, you probably need to repent. But second of all, maybe God's not directing you by his grace to give. Now, verse number 11. But now finish doing it also. How many of you know having a desire is one thing, but finishing it is a whole different story? That's what the Apostle Paul is telling the Corinthians. You know what? You had this desire. Now make it good. Now do what you desire. So he says, now finish doing it also, so that just as there was the readiness to desire it, so there may also be the completion of it by your ability. What's Paul saying? He said, you were ready. You wanted to desire. You wanted to give. You wanted to give to the saints in Jerusalem. And then he adds the next part in verse number 11, so there may also be the completion of it by your ability. The Apostle Paul is not telling them to do something that they didn't have the ability to do. He said, you complete it according to your ability, according to what you have. Verse number 12. For if the readiness is present, what's he talking about? This readiness, this desire to give, this chomping at the bit, wanting to give. If the readiness is present, it is acceptable according to what a person has and not according to what he doesn't have. That's a powerful statement. Paul is not looking for the Corinthians to give sacrificially, even though he's talked about that, and we covered that last week. The Apostle Paul is not asking for a sacrificial gift. He's asking them to give according to their abilities. Now again, I remind you that the city of Corinth was extremely rich. That they had all kinds of commerce. They had a wonderful economy. They were known as paradise to the Roman soldiers, because the Roman soldiers would come there for vacation. And so the Apostle Paul is saying, you know what, you need to give according to your ability, not according to what he does not have. Please. The Apostle Paul is not telling them to give sacrificially. Verse number 13. For this is not for the ease of others, and for your affliction. Now notice what he says. This offering is not to help someone else. It's not to ease someone else's pain, but it's also not there for your affliction. It's not there to hurt you. It's not there to put you in a place of pressure. The word affliction means to be in a narrow place. Paul's saying it's not to put you in a place of affliction, but by way of equality. Whoa, what a statement. What's Paul looking at? Paul is looking at the Corinthians and he's saying, you have got a lot of finances. You've got a lot of money. He said, but now you can give of your finances so that the saints in Jerusalem who are very poor can be on equal footing with you, so that they can be equal with you. Now, the last part of our podcast today, verse number 15, and we've covered a lot of verses today. It says, as it is written, he who gathers much did not have too much, and he who gathers little had no lack. What's the Apostle Paul talking about? By the way, that's a quote out of the book of Exodus, I believe. What's Paul talking about? He's talking about the laws of the children of Israel. And the laws of the children of Israel is that those who had much would give to those who had little, putting them on the same ground, putting them with the same value in life. The Apostle Paul is teaching an amazing message on the subject of offering. So I hope that you've been blessed in listening. We're going to continue this subject tomorrow, so join us. Thank you for watching.